All right, guys. It's 5 o'clock, Tuesday night, Ubud, Bali, December 1st, 2015. This is the filter number 71. Can you believe we've done this 70 times already and people are still showing up? It's very exciting. We've got a very good show for you tonight. Usually it's a great show, but tonight it's only very good. But hopefully it'll still be worth it. Tonight's show is called Financial Freedom and Personal Power, but I mean that in a way that you might not expect. So stick around. I'm going to try and lead a conversation about that. We've got Rick Shreves doing the numbers. That's always exciting, and there's some interesting things going on with the numbers, which you will see. We've got some fascinating developments in local news. Got a couple announcements there. And then around about halfway through, I'm going to try and do a macroeconomic analysis of the entire planet. Yes.
I think you should start now.
Strange things are afoot. That'll last about 3 minutes, so it's gonna, if you want a three-minute analysis of the entire globe, you come to the right place. We're gonna learn about things like the Baltic Dry Index. Nothing is more exciting than the Baltic Dry Index. Aren't you glad you came for the first time so you can learn about the Baltic Dry Index? It's a word that you can use it in cocktail parties for the following week. You'll be the life of the party. All right, so let's kick things off. I'm going to share my screen with the folks at home.
Just a quick question, Gary.
Yeah.
With Bitcoin for Wi-Fi how to start off weekend.
Yeah, come on. All right. That's the first time.
That's part of the. Ow. I caught my toe in the chair.
Ow.
Good thing people couldn't see my face during that little episode. All right. Yes, we'll talk about Bitcoin for Wi-Fi.
Okay.
We're even going to show a little promo.
I'm excited.
Okay.
Did we show the promo last week?
No.
Okay, good. All right, that's good. All right. Let's go. All right, we are coming to you live from Hubud. Who's that handsome devil right there? I haven't seen him in a while. That was Peter, the founder. But anyway, Peter was instrumental in allowing us to meet here every week in the air-conditioned conference room at Hubud. We do this every week, so if you ever find yourself in Bali, hopefully you'll join us in person for all the fun. And we are very appreciative to Hubud for allowing us to hold our meetings here. By the way, you can pay your membership at Hubud with Bitcoin. Don't forget. Anyway, yeah, hubud.org for more info on that. When we're not at Hubud, we congregate online. We do the blue. It's the Book of Face, Facebook group, Bitcoins in Bali. If you aren't already a member, you need to leave the room immediately. And then when you sign up, you can come back in. This is where we coordinate all of our offline activities. If you find something interesting, hopefully you'll be inspired to post it in the Facebook group so that when we get together in person, we can talk about it, argue about it, debate it. You got to put it here first or we won't know about it. So get on Facebook/group/Bitcoins in Bali. All right, local news. Bitcoin 101, y'all. December 12th. Tell your friends, and if you haven't been, tell yourself to mark it in your calendar. Saturday morning, 10 a.m. There's no place you'd rather be. It's better than Saturday morning cartoons. In fact, I think we do show a few cartoons in the Bitcoin 101, so you won't miss out too much. You need to register, so hit this little register button and get involved. There's only 20 spots left. They might be gone soon. So get in there. Bitcoin 101, that's Saturday the 12th.
The last one you did was a full house.
That's right.
It was.
That's true. That's true. The price is right. It's free. And if you can't remember that, you can always go to the Hubud events and scroll down. Where's 101? There's Chinta Bahasa. They also accept Bitcoin, by the way.
Yeah.
And there's Bitcoin 101 on the 12th. So come join us for that. All right. Elsewhere in local news, what is this Bitcoin for Wi-Fi thing? What is that? This, of course, was the result. I don't know if you heard me banging the drum before Startup Weekend, but I was determined to get a Bitcoin project into Startup Weekend. We did it. We got a Bitcoin project in there, and we came in third place. How about that? All right. Right on. I'm going to play this little promo for you. It's only 90 seconds. Check it out.
Bitcoin for Wi-Fi is a $100 million idea that monetizes unused Wi-Fi for the benefit of the 55 million travelers to Southeast Asia annually. We walk around in a veritable fog of Wi-Fi signal. At any given time, there can be multiple overlapping networks. Wi-Fi is everywhere, but we can't use it because most signals are locked. Our system allows users to connect to many Wi-Fi signals, combine the bandwidth, and pay by the second using an automatic smart contract negotiation and Bitcoin. Take a look at the phone app. It has a single configuration slider that prioritizes either cost or speed, revealing a heat map of the area showing the best places to connect. The phone is now empowered to purchase Wi-Fi access automatically as needed, negotiating the fastest Wi-Fi at the lowest price. So who's providing this Wi-Fi? Market research shows that thousands of tourism-oriented businesses currently offer Wi-Fi with no way to recoup the costs. Our merchant system solves this problem. A slider gives the owner a choice on how much excess capacity to sell at the highest price the market will bear. This system creates a moment-by-moment market-making mechanism for users and merchants with surge pricing built in. We have a comprehensive launch plan that combines a merchant and consumer acquisition strategy using ISP partnerships, referral bonuses, with social media tie-ins. Bitcoin for Wi-Fi opens up a sharing economy for fast internet access, turning the Wi-Fi fog into a $100 million business.
Okay. Wow. So a lot of that was a lot of that stuff we had to squeeze into 90 seconds. There were some things that were required, like the launch plan and you know, how we plan to get these things off the ground. But I think we, you know, it was required to create this 90-second video to enter the contest. We did that, and half of the criteria for us moving on to the next level is on votes. So I never asked you for anything before, but I'm asking you guys to, if you're so inclined to help us out, please use if you go to bitcoinforwifi.com, you can follow the link to vote, and we're drastically behind. Let me show you.
This is just to fill in, Gary, on the back of the fact we came third in Bali. We've gone on to the global startup battle, which is now what we're entered for.
Right, there were
most innovative team.
Right, there were something like 28 pitches in Bali, and we came in third there, and now we're amongst, I think, hundreds of entrants in the global competition, and like the winners are having like 2,000 votes, 1,000 votes, but I think we'll be doing all right if we can get to the front page, which requires about 200 votes, and we're around.
Can't you buy votes on Fiverr?
That's against the rules, but maybe that's what these guys are doing. Maybe there are dogs voting. Perhaps there are dogs voting. But we are following the rules. And are there any questions about the project or any interest in the project? Yeah, Deborah.
I'm very interested in the project, but
Yeah.
I'm also interested in what a commercial acquisition strategy is. What does that mean?
Well, it's a customer acquisition and merchant acquisition strategy. So the whole system requires an ecosystem, which is very tricky. We have to have enough merchants offering the Wi-Fi, and we have to have enough people walking around with the app on their phone. So what we decided to do was partner with the ISPs and say, roll this out to all of your routers. And then when you sit down at a business, like sit down at a restaurant, perhaps it says if you want the fast Wi-Fi, download the app. And then we have a merchant app connection. And if enough of that goes on in a short enough period of time, then we've got a critical mass. But that's the trickiest part of the business plan. If I was an investor, that would be the question that I would be the most interested in. How are you going to do this? How do you get enough people's attention to make this happen? But there's so many people that have such a crappy experience with Wi-Fi. I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking that people are feeling the pain, and if you,
I think merchants are feeling the pain as well because they've got people sitting in their cafes, they're not eating, drinking anything, they get one cup of coffee, they stay for 3 hours. So if they can monetize
right.
Wi-Fi that they're kindly providing, these Balinese love money.
Well,
So
you know,
this is the
currently,
way in.
you're right on. I mean, Blair, you went and talked to some of the merchants, right? And they were echoing that.
Well,
You know.
their feedback was that they consider Wi-Fi as important to their business as hygiene. Now.
Well,
That explains a lot.
if you said,
That was a quote, wasn't it?
if you said electricity, I'd be impressed.
Yeah.
That's how fundamentally important.
Are you commenting on the hygiene of the local restaurants?
There's some really dirty Wi-Fi.
The problem is that they've got to have it, but they've got no way of passing that cost on outside of increased sales. But they see that there's people who come in, will buy one coffee and sponge off their Wi-Fi for 4 hours, and then there's say 50% that come in and buy breakfast, coffee, and lunch, and they get the value out. But at the moment, it's out of kilter. So what they want to be able to do is provide better Wi-Fi, so there's a better Wi-Fi experience, but recover the cost of providing that better Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
So this is the solution.
Yeah, and if there becomes a real market for these things, there should be an incentive for them to double their bandwidth. You know, if they're maxed out and they're selling all this bandwidth, making money, they'll be inspired to buy a second router, which means we get faster internet, and it's not just a business owner buying the slowest Wi-Fi there is and hanging up a sign that says free Wi-Fi and calling it a day. So
Well, they could offer free Wi-Fi for the first hour and then click over to something like this.
right. There's also some very interesting things you can do once you have that software running at merchants all over Asia. You could have an automatic remittance endpoint business that you could introduce later. So each business that has one of these routers could become a remittance endpoint. And if you've got Indonesians working in New Zealand, for example, and wanting to send money back, if people in Bali can go to their local warung and take cash away, there's an incentive for the warung owner to take a little piece. It's much less expensive than Western Union. And if you've got the ubiquity, again, that's the tricky part, getting the network effects. But if once it's there, there's all kinds of services you can add on to this if you've got connectivity and computing power in each of these places. So
It's a big branding issue.
it's a
really
big,
about getting mind share to an Uber level.
yeah,
You know? Yeah.
yes.
I've seen some bandwidth sharing things that are like this, but without the paying component. And one of the issues they ran into in the U.S. was the government comes after you for things that happen on your Wi-Fi pipe or on your internet pipe, right?
Mhm.
So is that something that you consider here, or is maybe it's not a problem in this area?
Well, I mean, the Indonesian government does block certain internet sites, so they are interested in what's happening on the pipe, but you know, using SSL and pipe, like encrypted pipes, you can get through that.
So that would be the store owner might like VPN or put a VPN on their connector.
Or the VPN could just be a part of the system itself.
Yeah.
Yep. They could have a portal. Basically, their router could serve up a portal. They could act as a web server and pretty much provide a window into the entire world. And all that could take place on a secure connection.
But I would not, in Indonesia, I would not trust any other router other than what is on my laptop.
Yeah.
VPN out and access websites that the Indonesian government needs to be.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yep.
But I see what you're saying. Like,
Yeah.
personally,
It's an interesting question, and you know, I don't know when we'll bump up against it, but it's probably something to know about. Yeah.
So how are we going to get these votes up?
Well, you need to go. I'll post the link, but you need to go to this one link and click here to vote. And you can do that every day until Friday. Yeah. All right. I'm glad that you have. You can do it every day until December 4th. So today's the 1st.
So
One vote per person per day.
Per person per day. Okay.
So if you don't mind, it's a little bit of a hassle to log in every time, but
Send us post a reminder.
okay.
Can we get our
daily
friends at
reminder.
Change Tip onto to help
Yeah, we
us
could.
get across the line?
Sure.
That's a great
Well,
idea.
you know, tomorrow the folks at bitcoin.co.id are kind enough to blast out to 27,000 Indonesians. So
Yay.
hopefully that will result in something. And we haven't. Pardon me.
What did they do exactly?
They're an exchange. Bitcoin.co.id is the.
I've been in their office today.
Oh, you have? Yeah. Did you meet Swasti?
Yeah.
She's great.
Yeah, she told me about the Bitcoin community here.
Ah, cool. Yeah, welcome. Yeah, we're happy to have you. So anyway, yeah, and if anyone's got any ideas, I mean, I'm not used to trying to make a big splash with things, and I did get my mom to vote several times, but I don't.
On your own Facebook page, you have more friends than you know.
Yeah. Okay.
Really, and they'll tell their friends.
Uh-huh.
Suzanne just won her.
Yeah, that's right.
She just won. She wanted to be a travel writer, and she needed the same kind of voting, and she won the whole competition.
Wow.
So yeah.
That's cool.
Awesome. But I think mobilizing out.
Yeah.
Bitcoin
Yes.
And your connections.
Yes to all of the above. So anyway, thank you for taking a look at that project, and thanks to all of you who have voted. We're getting there, and we still have a few more days. So
Great promo, Gary.
thank you. All right, so let's turn it over to our man Rick. He's going to go through the numbers. Take it away, Rick.
All right. So we've had a fairly interesting week. Today is actually our first really solid down day. We're down about 4% today. Let's go over and flip over to the U.S. dollar price. I'm just more comfortable talking about that. You can see we had a dip. We've actually had a bit of a bounce right now. It seems we found the bottom again. What's interesting about what's been happening lately, if you look at across the last 30 days when we had this massive spike, you'll see, can you go for a 30-day chart there? Is that possible?
I've got this one, which is a week. Here's a month.
Yeah, you'll see that while we came really sharply off that 499 high, there's really evidently a psychological barrier, a psychological safety level right about 300, and we never dipped below that, and now we're starting to see a bit of bounce back, and we're seeing really strong volume as well, and we'll get to that in just a sec. Anybody know what happened 2 years ago? It was actually during the course of this last week when we didn't meet. We had the 2-year anniversary of
1200.
1242,
Oh, wow.
the all-time high. It was 2
There it
years
is.
ago this last week.
There it is.
There it is, right there. So a bit of a change from those days, but still, as we saw in the last 30 days, the possibility for some major volatility when the conditions are right. Gary, what's next on the charts? We're going to get to a few more observations about this in a second. Notice our reward values right at $9,500 right now, so good solid numbers there. Our market cap is sitting at $5.45 billion, which brings our N1 rank down to number 97, so we're back in the top 100 again. Excuse me. What's really interesting has been what's happening with transaction volume. Is that next, Gary, or is volatility next? There's transactions. We had record transaction volume this last week. It's not really showing very clearly in that chart.
This is a long timeline. Let's see. There's 60 days, and there's the last stress test. So we're right here.
I don't know why this chart data differs from the other that I was looking at, but it does.
Do you want to look at CoinDesk?
Why don't we just flip over to that article on CoinDesk? That'll be the way to go, I think.
Okay.
That's next in the series anyway, isn't it?
Sorry.
There we go. Oh, it's exchange trading volumes. I should be more specific. Exchange trading volumes. There we go. There are our numbers. Our trading exchange volumes hit record levels this last week. And that's right off the most recent high, which was during the peak this last 30 days when we hit the 499 number. There's some major numbers coming out of the exchanges right now. But as this article points out, some of it is a bit suspicious. Take a look at the first point here. Bitcoinity, busiest day for exchanges ever, was recorded 26 November. 2.86 million worth of Bitcoins traded across all exchanges indexed. The previous peak was 4 weeks ago when we hit that October 30 number, 2.49 million Bitcoins traded. But like I say, there are some suspicions that accompany this. One of the biggies Oh man, what have I done? I knew I shouldn't have tried to drive. I totally screwed that up. Yeah,
let's see.
Bonafide shut down. For those of you who haven't heard about that, one of the first of the startups is going down. Can you scroll down to the next highlight things?
There. Let's see. Did my highlights go away?
Our highlights disappeared.
Sorry.
That's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. That was one of them right there. Can you scroll up a little bit, please? Up to that next text block. There we go. Second paragraph, quote, only a small percentage of exchange volume will be due to genuine Bitcoin use or adoption, said Alistair Milne, who runs the Monaco-based Altana Digital Currency Fund. What we're seeing, in other words, is we're seeing some arguments here that some of the exchanges have set up bots to inflate trading volume, either for purposes of keeping their investors inspired and happy, or for marketing purposes to make it look like their exchange is more active, under the theory that if we have a more active exchange, we are going to attract more customers. There were some really stunning numbers that came out of one of the groups, BTCC, I believe it was, produced a number that said over the last 60 days, 2 of the China exchanges claim to have accounted for 78% of the total Bitcoin transaction volume. In contrast, BTCC during the same period handled only 5% of the volume.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, of course, on one hand, they may be taking the wind out of their competitors, but the disparity between those numbers is great enough. One has to be a wee bit suspicious about what's coming out there. And again, it's coming out of the China market where there's no oversight over the exchanges, so they can see whatever the hell they want.
Well, and this is based on information that the APIs are reporting. This is not on blockchain transactions. This is according to the exchanges. And so the exchanges can be, you know, have one bot that buys and another bot that sells, and they can drive the price up. In fact, this happened, you mentioned that it's been 2 years since that 1200 figure, and we're pretty sure that it was bots driving up the price way back then as well. So
there's also another point that comes out of this article we're going to pick up on in a second. It relates to volatility. And this article makes the point that with the introduction of leverage trading, the possibility for outsized movements, for quick movements up and down, has increased dramatically. And they put a quote out here that says one exchange says that they're allowing traders to borrow up to 20 times their principal. And that has led to, quote, a noticeable uptick in trading activity already. So there are things happening, folks. There are things happening. Can we scroll down a little bit, please? That chart shows the trend in leverage trading on Bitcoin.
what is this time scale here?
It's microscopic is what it is. I'll use my superpowers and tell you what that says.
Oh, so this is over a couple years?
It's over a
1
year.
year. Oh, over 1 year.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So the point they make in the first sentence of this next paragraph, the disconnect between real-world Bitcoin adoption and the Bitcoin price is illustrated by the fact that the total number of transactions on the blockchain has increased at a steady rate over the past year, nearly doubling, okay? Meanwhile, the price is roughly at the same level it was 12 months ago. So for those of you who are looking for good news and want to be bullish on the market, well, we've got big increases in volume. We haven't seen those increases in price overall. Theoretically, Bitcoin is undervalued. Oh, here it is. Whale Club. This is another organization that's pointing the finger at exchanges, however, and saying they're generating fake trades to pump up their volume. And there's the quote about the two China-based exchanges, OKCoin and Huobi. And Bobby Lee, they're saying, hey, they only had 5% of BTCC over the same period. But, you know, there's this other argument that the China exchanges have been seeing big volumes due to changes in the regulatory environment, things that are happening with the renminbi, uncertainty in the China traditional stock exchange, et cetera. So which one of those things is predominant? I don't know. Are both of them a factor? Probably. Probably.
So what proportion of the volume would you reckon is suspect? Because even
God knows. I have absolutely no way of telling you a number that makes any sense. I would be pulling that out of a bodily orifice.
So, I'm just, just looking at that chart, looking at the volumes. Right. It's, bounced off that 300 level.
Yeah.
Even if you halved the volumes, if you assume that half of the current volumes are suspect, that's still pretty solid.
Pretty solid growth. I agree. My personal opinion, and again, nobody go out and buy Bitcoin based on what I say. I'm not a financial advisor. My personal opinion is that Bitcoin is undervalued at this point in time. And I think part of what we've seen driving it lately hasn't been so much Black Friday, even though we did have quite a bit of Bitcoin transaction volume associated with Black Friday and the online sales that surrounded that. But I think it's out of the increase in the number of positive news items, particularly from the financial sector with blockchain adoption, et cetera.
Banks.
Yeah, and I think that, if we look at the charts, that, what we've seen is we've seen good resiliency against serious downwards pressure, right? And I think that speaks well for the viability of Bitcoin, and the valuation of Bitcoin. But on that subject, because there's a psychological component to this that we never discuss, can we move on to volatility? Okay, volatility is still quite high, as all of us might expect. These spikes we've seen this last week don't help that number any. But on the subject of volatility, there's this great article on CoinDesk that takes a totally different approach to the whole volatility issue. Basically, they come at it from a psychology perspective. Fundamental argument being that people are susceptible to manipulation by strongly positive, strongly negative news items and tend to react to those in a particular fashion. Could you scroll down? Let's see if we still have any of our highlights in this article. Keep going. There we go. Information guides expectations, and depending on what your expectation is, whether Bitcoin's about to skyrocket or crash, a region in the brain called the striatum will react differently. The striatum is associated with decision making and has the densest collection of dopamine receptors in the brain. So, in other words, people tend to react more strongly to those bits of news that confirm their expectations, right? Even your personal experience will back this up. Why is this important in the Bitcoin world? Because, as they highlight in the second one, the smaller the market, and anything with a greater role for human decision-making is where you'd see greater benefit in understanding the psychology or the physiology. With Bitcoin, information is more scarce, and that each little bit of information that comes out has a potentially big effect on people's valuation of that thing. So it's sort of like we were saying before when we were talking about the disproportionate impact of the China market's actions on Bitcoin price, that since it is a relatively smaller market, it can be moved by things that wouldn't move a larger market. And so, yeah, we should consider the physiology or the psychology, if you prefer, of what's happening with Bitcoin buying and selling.
So even like a Tuesday night meeting in the jungle could have effect on the Bitcoin price?
I think we can at least prove correlation, if not causation.
Yeah.
That they have probably started running bots that do buying and selling. But don't you think that they have been those bots running for the whole lifetime of these exchanges? Because I've been personally developing a bot like this for a starting exchange. They needed to grow up the starting volume. And I think many of the exchanges might have those bots from the very beginning.
I would be surprised if they didn't. I think your experience, really proves the point, right? So yeah, I think that they do. Have they been more active recently for a variety of reasons? Possibly. But, those numbers coming out of those two China exchanges are, in my eyes, suspect volume numbers.
I really can't estimate how much of the volume is reduced by bots.
It's opaque, there's no way that we're getting that information from those exchanges. And this is part of the problem with having an unregulated, opaque market, right? Yeah. So that's the downside.
But you know what? We do have way more exchanges now than we did back when the price was run up to 1,200. So it's harder for exchanges to play these kinds of games because with arbitrage opportunities.
And we have our first regulated exchanges as well. So
right.
Things have changed dramatically in this 24 months.
Yeah. Yes.
What about blockchain transactions?
Well, these things never hit the blockchain until people withdraw their money. So if you're just watching the API, you're watching a bunch of Bitcoin exchange hands, but they're not. There are not requisite updates to the blockchain until someone withdraws their money.
So that's what they mean by trading volume. It's actually just a movement from one account to another as
exchange trading volume.
Different value.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, that's a very important point. Yeah.
So internally, if anything is exchanged, we don't know what's happening.
We don't know if it's real or not. It's just the API saying this guy bought, this guy. Yeah.
Everything was written to the blockchain.
No.
So I just have two accounts.
Yeah, like
I have a
that
bot
was
set
the
backwards and
problem.
forwards all day long.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
That makes sense.
And if you can get the market to move, you've got the fear of missing out phenomenon. people see the price climbing, especially when the market gets thin. It can be subject to these kinds of manipulations, and you can have actual money trading hands, and that's when the bots pay off.
What about, you mentioned Black Friday. What about Singles Day in China? That's the biggest. Do we see, doesn't all the volumes emanating out of China at the moment?
Right.
Or a large
I didn't try to
proportion?
correlate those dates. I don't know if there was a bump or not. I haven't seen anybody talking about it.
No. But it was recently, wasn't it? A couple of months ago?
Yeah.
It was recently, yeah.
It happened to be around the pump up to 500. Didn't it?
Don't know. I'd have to look at the numbers. I don't know when that is.
That's the biggest consumer day in the world.
Huh. I don't know.
It's
November 21st.
November 20, yeah, so recently. Huh?
But that's well after the $4.99 bump.
Yeah.
All right.
Trading volumes is not a big parameter. What is it?
Well, we can see, volume on blockchain. That's a good number, right? For sure. But trading volume is an indicator, right? It's an indicator of sentiment, if nothing else. So, I mean, would I pin my investment strategy on it? No. Do I pay attention to it? Yes.
But you've also got regulated exchanges like what am I thinking of? Yeah, where you can depend more on the stuff that they're reporting than maybe something in China. And it looks like this guy Bobby Lee from BTCC is also playing fair, and he was traditionally one of the biggest exchanges, so he's kind of crying foul. We just don't know how foul, but.
What do you think
It's the Wild West, man. It's exciting.
When they put more infrastructure on, isn't there some statistics on infrastructure, the amount of infrastructure online, as far as the mining?
Yeah, we
I've
see
seen something like that before.
there are people who keep stats on mining power, right?
Yeah.
But as Gary and I were talking about last week, there's always the question, how many of those are new operators? How many of those are people who simply upgraded their rig? Because they tend to judge mining power by CPU capacity, right? So, it could be, we've got a new generation of chips that have been deployed, so.
All right, let's leave it there, guys. Let's move on to some other. This was posted by Rick, who apparently does read the Hellenic shipping news. And
Thrill a minute over at my place, let me tell you.
that's how he gets all the ladies. That's part of his pickup line.
Hanging out.
What is going on with my computer here? Pretty soon it's going to launch iTunes.
I touched it, I screwed it up.
All right. Anyway, I think Baltic Dry Index. What is the Baltic Dry Index? It measures the rates for chartering the giant ships that transport iron ore, coal, and grain. Have you guys ever seen the big containers? Those huge containers that come and go? Well, this index is designed to gauge how healthy the international shipping is taking place, right? Well, ever since 2008, it's been kind of sputtering. And what the Economist is saying here is there's no doubt that world trade is slowing down. China's rip-roaring economy, the destination for well over half the world's ship-borne iron ore, and 25% of the coal has cooled. So, China used to have about a 10% growth rate. Then their target was 7, and in a recent quarter, they came in under 7 for the first time in a long time. This is borne out by the Baltic Dry Index. People watch, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, or they'll watch the S&P 500, and those things arguably are more manipulatable than something like this, where you've got actual ships in the actual water carrying actual goods.
You don't rip
places.
one if you don't need one.
Yeah.
So let me see. There was a point that I wanted to make. Okay, here, episodes of short-term volatility are one way that the touchiness of the index to the vagaries of supply and demand manifests itself. The supply of ships is inelastic. It takes around 2 to 3 years between ordering a new vessel and its launch. So response to shifts in demand is slow, and conditions can change while additions to the fleet are under construction. that's a mouthful, but what's really going on there, it illustrates how much the monetary system has skewed the incentive in investment. The way money moves around the planet and the interest rates are supposed to indicate to business owners if there's a need to invest in new infrastructure. If you think everything is good, then you buy more ships, right? And if it takes 2 to 3 years for your ships to show up, you've got to have a good gauge on what your future demand for shipping will be. And so when you've got interest rates that have been held at 0 since 2008, there's a bad signal to people investing in things like new ships. They think the world is great. Stock prices are going like crazy. We're going to need more ships to ship more stuff. And there's a 2 to 3 year kind of ramp. It's kind of like a big freighter. You can't turn it on a dime. You got to, make some plans before you steer the ship in a new direction. It's the same for the entire industry. And take a look at this graph. Since 2008, everybody took this nosedive off the cliff in 2008. And I'm going to show you a few graphs where there's been a real recovery or evident recovery since 2008. But this graph is really anemic. We're nowhere near where we were in 2008. And this article is talking about the index is at an all-time low. We're way, you got to go way back. I wish this was a longer graph, because I think you have to go back to like before the turn of the century to get to as low as where we are now.
Can you say saturation? 30 years.
Right. Yeah, Baltic Dry Index has hit a 30-year low. So there's not even 30 years on this graph. It's worse than you think. So yeah, I really wanted to highlight, because this is a great example of how there's been so much malinvestment since 2008. 7-8 years of maladjustment. We're not able to communicate with one another, because interest rates communicate demand, the money supply communicates demand, prices communicate demand, and you can see by other measures. Let's take a look at the Dow Jones. Here's the cliff in 2008, but look, we're at all-time highs with the Dow. But is that real? Probably not. We're in bubble territory. No one can really predict a bubble, but you would expect this to correspond with increased activity in global shipping, right? If the globe is transacting more with one another, then that would drive stock prices higher. What you see is the shipping is anemic, but the stock prices are going up. So something is not right.
Yeah. Can I flash back on that for just a sec? If you were paying attention to that Baltic Dry Index article, one of the points that they're making in that article is part of the reason why the chart looks so terrible is that there was an overbuilding of ships. There's excess capacity. But the number that came out of Hellenic Shipping News is actually reinforced right here in that first paragraph. And this is the one that made me wake up, which is in the last 13 weeks, shipping rates are down 65%. That has nothing to do with excess shipping capacity. That's simply because the people aren't booking the containers.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Has anyone been to Singapore in the last 2 weeks?
Yeah.
No. Ships are sitting at the front of Singapore. That's where they sit.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Did you see them, or are you saying?
I've been there recently, but that's what happened in 2009, I think it was. A bit of a lag after the crisis.
Yeah,
They just sat at the front of Singapore. They sat at the front of Panama, basically waiting for wherever they're called so they can get to the next point as soon as possible. So they can't go on dock because it costs money, right? So they just sit offshore waiting. Singapore is a very transit, like a very focal point between China and iron ore in Australia and whatnot.
So that means that
Singapore.
that means that my plastic flip-flop business I'm going to get really good rates on shipping when I ship that over to. Yeah. All right. Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Although one thing I do want to say about the Dow Jones is that will include a lot of stocks and things that don't have anything to do with physical goods.
Mm-hmm.
So
right.
Yeah, that may be the reason why that is. So
well, you know what's been going on.
Different.
Where is my story on? I don't know where it is, but basically this is due to a massive stock buyback program that many Fortune 500 companies are implementing right now. So they're essentially buying back their own stock, changing the supply and demand so they're borrowing money to buy back their own stock in order to drive their own stock price higher. So these are the kinds of manipulations that take place.
Yeah.
You know, we were talking earlier about manipulating the Bitcoin price. This is a whole nother level, right? This is like everybody in the world looks at these numbers right here. It's, if you want to be more sophisticated, then you take a look at something like the Baltic Dry Index, because those are real ships shipping real things, and you can't, you know, play games like buying back stock and, you know, front running on, you know, commodities prices, etc.
And in terms of like actually measuring prosperity, we have to do the mix of both real goods and, you know, the Ubers and Facebooks of the world, right, as well. Is that, you know,
Bitcoin for Wi-Fi. Yeah.
Bitcoin for Wi-Fi. Yeah. There's another level of us providing value for the world that's not bound up in physical goods anymore.
Doesn't like Dow Jones have like some
30, only 30. It's actually a terrible measure.
Yeah, it's like the worst measure in the world.
It is. Well, and they swap, you know, companies in and out of that thing. It's like, it's awful, actually.
We need real metrics.
The Russell 5000 is the same.
True. Yeah.
We need real metrics, don't we?
We do. We do.
That buyback stuff is happening in Australia as well. So I don't know where else it's happening in the world, but it's certainly happening in Australia.
Yeah.
There's a system ticking. It's clean. That's it.
All right. So speaking of playing games, you know, we've had the global financial crisis in 2008, and since before 2008, the Federal Reserve, who basically sets interest rates for the world, so basically sets prices for the entire planet, because the United States enjoys manipulating the world's reserve currency, which is currently the US dollar. We're talking about raising rates for the first time since 2006. Right, and we were talking about doing this back in September. Did anyone pay attention to the price of the rupiah back in back at that time? Right, right. We were at all-time low values versus the dollar. And have you seen something happening recently? You can see it creeping up and up and up. We're approaching 14 million per dollar right now. 14,000 per dollar. Sorry.
Nice.
So the next meeting is on the 16th of December. Keep your eyes peeled on this, and you can actually make some good decisions about moving your money. Like if you need to, you know, pay your rent, you might want to wait until the 16th before you change your dollars into rupiah, because then we could have a very different picture. I think back at that time the rupiah went to 14.7, if I'm not mistaken.
Almost 1.5.
And this, what's that?
What about Canadian to rupiah?
I don't know. Some of those other currencies move in a different way. I know the Australian dollar moves in a different way to the rupiah. Right. So
Singapore's pretty close usually.
It's a little
Yeah.
laggard.
what about Canada? Eh?
I thought they shoot US dollars.
We need a Canadian correspondent, Patrick,
Yes,
if you're game.
Sure.
All right. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled for the rate hike, and I'll post this little story about countdown to liftoff December. All right, moving on. We're going to China, folks. You guys recognize Christine Lagarde runs the IMF. We've talked about the special drawing rights, the world's last fiat currency that has a clean balance sheet. The IMF is has the third largest gold hoard in the world, and they're not a country. Right? I think it's the U.S. and then Germany and then the IMF. You know, this is a very powerful organization in the world, and they maintain their own fiat currency like the dollar. It's called special drawing rights, the SDR. And the big news this week is that, well, I'll let Christine speak for herself here.
The IMF's executive board decided that the renminbi qualified for the SDR basket under existing criteria. But the addition and the inclusion of the renminbi in the SDR basket of currencies is a recognition of the significant reforms which have been conducted, of the significant opening up of the Chinese economy, of the financial, more market-driven principles that are being used by the Chinese authorities going forward. that is clearly symbolic in a way of all those reforms, which is why I associated the renminbi's inclusion with the reforms conducted and to be continued.
So this is a big deal, folks. Sorry if that was a little bit boring or dry. Let me see if I can make it more exciting for you. There are only 4 currencies currently in the SDR basket of currencies, right? And this is all an accounting thing. There's nothing real except for their gold hoard, but really they're just using the values of these 4 currencies, which is the US dollar, the euro, the yen, and the pound. Yes. So this would make 5. And according to another article that I read, they're putting the Chinese renminbi as 3rd in terms of health amongst those 5. And you know, we don't know what goes on behind closed doors, but the Chinese have been also hoarding gold, importing gold, and we don't know how much they're able to mine internally. We actually don't know how much gold China has. But on the other measures, you know, their openness, their convertibility to the renminbi, all these other things that are supposed to make them eligible for inclusion in this basket of currencies is not that strong. They still have a lot of capital controls. They're widely criticized for manipulating the value of their currency. They recently devalued their currency. So there's something going on there maybe we're not quite aware of. But what's interesting is, you know, this dilutes the power of the dollar. Make no mistake, there is a de-dollarization trend happening. Right. Wait, what did I say? What was the word?
De-dollarization.
De-dollarization. That's you heard it here first. Feel free to use that in a sentence this week. No, there's, you know, we've been printing all these dollars. I showed you that that graph, my favorite graph. This is how much we've quadrupled the money supply since 2008. This is the global financial crisis. This is us printing money. We went from a little under $1 trillion to $4 trillion that we've printed. And in the meantime, the world is using fewer dollars. So if you know about supply and demand, you know that this is going to result in inflation, right? Inflation is right around the corner. So I don't know, hang on to your hats. This is like this, along with lots of other things that we've talked about in the past. You know, the Chinese setting up their own development bank, you know, setting up specific trade agreements so they don't have to settle in dollars, etc. All these dollars are all over the world, and they're coming home soon, and that's going to mean inflation in the United States, and possibly some sort of financial problem that pressures the world to move to a new reserve currency. What will that reserve currency be? I think. Yeah, I think Christine Lagarde would say, hey, maybe it'll be the SDR. But you've also got Bitcoin, right? Check out this story. Barbados Central Bank is considering holding Bitcoin. It's just Barbados. It's just Barbados, but I think it's an interesting. Yeah. You know, they're nimble. They're small. They're.
Is this a real news or? Because sometimes
whenever you have to use the word "consider" in a headline, I don't think that's a very strong word for a headline. But it's an interesting concept. It's an interesting concept. You know, people. Well, lots of people poo-poo the role of gold in the international monetary system, and yet the IMF holds all this gold. The Chinese are amassing gold, and you know, Bitcoin has a lot of the same properties as gold. If Bitcoin were to ever become the world's reserve currency, or the way that governments settle their balance of accounts with one another, and it's great for that, by the way. You know, if you settle your balance of accounts in gold, you have to like hire a few hundred security guards and 2 747s, right? That's what Germany did, I think.
I have a question about that. You said. Well, we've been talking about the gold, how much gold each country possesses, and what role does it play exactly for a country, how much gold we possess, if none of the world fiat currencies are now based on the gold?
Well, that's exactly why they want gold, because it's an accounting mechanism that has integrity. You know, when the dollar crashes and all of a sudden you have no idea what things are worth in terms of dollars, because all that inflation hits.
So
then
they want it for the future, right?
Right.
Right now, it doesn't play that big.
right. But they're thinking about the future. You know, they're at some point in time, what'll happen, this has happened many times throughout history, is there will be a revaluation between the symbol and the actual thing. And gold is an actual thing that you can count, that you can verify, and you know, that's a big reason why the Chinese renminbi is able to enter the SDR basket of currencies, and why they can play a first-class role in the global economy. It's because of the gold. So, I mean, there's a storm coming. I mean, there's going to be, you can't hold interest rates at 0 and quadruple your money supply and expect there not to be some sort of adjustment, right? That adjustment is coming, and when they adjust, they'll adjust to reality. You know, your real house will no longer be worth $1 million; it'll be worth 300,000, right? Yeah.
A dumb question, but the criminals' money, but what about distribution? You can hold this money in like reserve and not distribute it in the market.
Well, that's well, what that value shows is the money that they make available to banks to hold as reserve, so that they can do fractional reserve banking on those totals. And what's happening is people aren't borrowing money. It's like pushing on a string. You know, I mean, their interest rates are at 0, and people still aren't initiating projects. Maybe because they can see the Baltic Dry Index is so anemic, and they're like, maybe we won't, you know, buy a bunch of ships, so we won't borrow the money to build those ships. And you can't force people to borrow money, even if it's at 0%. But that's the idea, is that they hold those interest rates low in order to stimulate the economy, and that is not happening.
But can the interest rate then, like, can the supply then regulate itself? Depending on demand? Well,
it's supposed to regulate itself, but that's not what's happening. They've created artificial circumstances. Right. The interest rate is supposed to be driven by the market, not by, you know, a gray-haired lady that like gets up on a podium and says the interest rate is now, you know, 0.25 instead of 0. I mean, that's the world we live in today. But you know, there's 1 million people making 1 million decisions about 1 million things, and those market forces should determine what the real interest rate should be. But that's not what's happening. That's why things are so screwed up. That's why they overbought all those ships. Those shipping companies are struggling because there's malinvestment. When you mess with those numbers, then it sends the wrong signal, and you know, you have malinvestment. You build cities where, you know, where no people live in. You build bridges to nowhere. You have all these crazy things going on in the world that just defy logic.
Right.
Yeah.
So what if that doesn't release all this newly printed money to the market? It does not drive up.
It still has to be reabsorbed in some way. It's already it's already out there. People have already made loans based on this, and all that's got to come home if they want to contract the money supply. The Federal Reserve is in the business of increasing and decreasing the money supply to suit the economy, and yeah, they're all out of ammo because they've been going in one direction since 2008. And you know, recessions happen every 6 to 7 years, so we're due. We're ready to have another one, and they can't get the interest rate below 0, and they really can't print any more money. So they're going to try and raise interest rates on December 16th, and if the world economy continues to head south, I mean, I don't know what they'll do. It's going to be exciting. Yeah.
It's definitely not going to help stimulate the economy to
No.
have the interest rates go up.
That's right. It's going to drive people to the dollar, and then, you know, things are going to become more expensive. All that debt is going to become more expensive if denominated in dollars. People will contract. You'll have a shrinkage factor. It's another word of the day. How many are we on today? Shrinkage.
Well, there's Barbadian too. I've never seen that.
Barbadian?
I wondered about that, Ed.
Barbadasian?
What would you have otherwise? Barbadosian?
No.
All right,
It's
That's
Bayesian.
a first.
It's
Barbadian.
Bayesian.
So what do we, you know, all this stuff is, like, I don't know Christine Lagarde. Do you guys know Christine Lagarde?
Not personally.
Anybody have, anybody can get Janet Yellen on the phone? Why do we talk about these things? I mean, we're helpless. Like we can't affect the interest rate hike on December 16th. We can't do much of anything really, or can we? You know, I think. Well, you know, that's it really. I mean, I'm not suggesting that everyone should sell everything and get into Bitcoin, but it is one of the levers that if more people made that choice with even a small portion of their money, you're taking the money out of the system and you're taking the power away from the people that have all the levers of control to manipulate things in this regard. In fact, you know, if we could get our small community to transact using Bitcoin and to make loans in Bitcoin and to make their excess Bitcoin available to their friends and family so that they could begin to build things, there could be a real market for money and interest rates amongst a community. And you could actually start to allocate resources appropriately, that you could establish your own kind of market mechanisms that drive the price of money and the interest rates that prevail within a small community. And I think it's part of community resilience to do this. If you saw what happened in Greece and you saw how helpless those people were because all of their money is in the incumbent banking system, and boom, there's capital controls and the ATMs don't work, and you know, you're a business owner, you can't pay your bills overseas, you're totally helpless. If you take a few steps, get some of your finances out of the system, then you've got more power. This is about financial freedom and financial power, and we do have the ability to take some of that back. I wanted to show you guys this site, bitcoinmegaphone.com. Basically, it's a site where you can post stuff, but it costs you a little bit of money. It costs you. There's a market mechanism for how much speech you can say. So. So it's kind of so presumably there's less spam, but we've still got gay bon. This guy like blew 11 cents to get his gay boners on the front page. So apparently it's not expensive enough. Like we need to raise the price. But I think this is it's just an interesting concept. It's just one of those things that, you know, because Bitcoin's around, you can do it, right? And this guy, one of the guys, this is actually on the front page of Reddit today. He spent $1.14 to say, when the next war comes, put all your money into Bitcoin. That way we can starve the war machine while it eats itself. Apparently some people liked that and tipped his comment. But he's kind of making the point that in a more vulgar way. But you know, throughout human history, the powers that be have used the fractional reserve banking and real money devaluation to fund war. And you know, we talk about these things that maybe you can feel a little bit powerless, but I think if you start to move your money into your own pocket, really, you can take some of that power away.
De-dollarization.
De-dollarization and Bitcoinization. Yeah, so anyway.
Promo the Bitcoins for Wi-Fi on here and see if we get on the front page of Reddit.
Oh yeah, there
yes.
we go.
Can you guys, will you guys log into Reddit and upload it for us? Actually, I want to go out on that note because we're out of time, so we're going to wrap things up. Any questions on the stuff that we were talking about just now? Because it's a bit of a monologue on my part. I don't know what you guys think about this stuff. I think it's important to remember what you can do, especially when you're thinking about these big world problems. But yeah. All right, so we're out of time. I'm gonna go out with a plug for Bitcoin for Wi-Fi. Please, if you like the idea, I don't want you to vote if you don't like the idea, but if you do like the idea, please vote, and you can vote every day from now until Friday. And the number of votes will determine if we can actually take this idea forward. So take a look at bitcoinforwifi.com. That'll lead you to the voting page. And yeah, keep your eye on Bitcoins in Bali, and I'll post the Reddit link when I get it up in the next day. Thank you for coming tonight, folks. Yay. It was fun. We'll see you next week. By the way, next week is the last meeting before we're going to take some time off for Christmas. So make sure you come and wear your Santa hat. We'll see you next week. Thanks, guys.
Does that mean we're going somewhere cold?